Alright then guys, welcome back to the client case study series. Today we're going to be talking about Corey. So I thought this would be a really cool one to go through today because this is someone at the very peak of the natural bodybuilding sport, and I thought it might be quite interesting for you guys to basically see what do the people with the best natural physiques in the world actually put into this process on a day-to-day basis. You know, what do their systems look like? What are they doing relative to what you're doing? And just to sort of cast some perspective on basically what it takes to be the best in the world at natural bodybuilding. And I would say his is actually probably the physique that I have more people than any others come to me saying, oh, I want to look like that guy, because he does truly have a world-class physique. And I thought it would be cool to run through what his journey's been so far, how he continues to make rapid progress, even sort of like decades into his lifting journey, and what he's done so far to get to this stage, what our journey together has been, and what he's achieved. So Corey and I have been working together for 2 years. He first came to me actually at the start of his first ever competition season. He'd already done a couple of crappy, untested bodybuilding shows, and he came to me with a really clear goal of, look, I want to win a natural bodybuilding pro card. Now, usually, if someone comes to me, something like that, they've never competed in natural bodybuilding before, and with such an optimistic goal, I'd usually say, come on, hold your horses. That's a ridiculous goal to have before you even compete. But I looked at his physique. I go to a lot of natural bodybuilding shows, and I was like, yeah, okay, to be fair, that probably is doable, as ridiculous as it sounds. So we set this super lofty goal of qualifying for a WMBF pro card, his first season of competing, which is the hardest pro card to achieve in natural bodybuilding, the most competitive federation. And we wanted to do it through the most difficult pathway, which is winning it at the UK show, where they used to only give away one pro card. So this was his journey. When we first started off, he'd previously been working with an Instagram famous coach that was basically just fobbing him off with copy and paste training and nutrition protocols, giving him some ridiculous peaking strategies. So that's basically the process of, you know, getting someone's midsection as tight as possible, filling them up with glycogen, and making sure they're as fresh as possible. And he was doing some ridiculous things that were no doubt hampering his look. So I was pretty confident when we first started working together. I was like, look, we could even just present what you already have a bit better and noticeably improve the look. So that's exactly what we did with his first show of the season together, which was a BMBF regional qualifier. So that's a different federation. They have lots of regional qualifiers leading to a British final. So went into that pretty confident. I knew what the standard was, and I thought, yeah, we're going to win this. Didn't quite go to plan. Had the best two guys in the rest of the country show up alongside him, and we came third in his first show. So it wasn't exactly the ideal start to us working together. We got a really disappointing result, mainly based on the quality of who turned up, and we got basically blown away with the lower body development of those guys. So at this point, this was a real knock to Corey's confidence. Come into it on an absolute sort of sky high, you know, being told by everyone around him how fucking great it was, me included. And then came third, regional qualifier. Our goal is to get a pro card, which requires you to be a British champion. So we were like, oh, fuck. Understandably, this messed with his head a little bit. And he actually went off the rails for that week, said, I've got to bulk, I've got to bring up my legs before this next show in the next 2 months' time. And I was like, look, that isn't going to happen. You aren't going to build an appreciable amount of muscle in this time. The only card we've got to play here is condition, basically getting leaner than any other guys. He came round to it, he knuckled down to it and worked harder than probably I've ever seen anyone work, and actually has kept that up for the last 2 years solidly as well. This is genuinely the hardest working bloke I've ever worked with. He's an absolute nut job. Any of you guys that know him, he fucking loves this stuff. And he's quite an inspirational guy to go around. The stuff that other people would really sort of bulk at and be like, I'm not sure I want to do that, he will eat it up. He was urging me to let him train 7 days a week. He was begrudging every sort of deload that I gave him. Always wanted to work harder. So it was my job to sort of steer him in the right direction, stop the wheels coming off, and get him lean. And we got him absolutely shredded, to the extent that he then went on to win the British finals and beat the guys that had beaten him at the regional finals just by coming in, you know, unbelievably lean and conditioned. In that time frame, you don't build a huge amount of muscle. So at this point, we were like, okay, cool. We know we can do this. we then went on to the main show that we'd had scoped out, which was the WNBF Supernaturals, which is probably, for those of you who don't follow natural bodybuilding, which I'm guessing is most of you watching this video, it's probably the single most competitive amateur natural bodybuilding show in the world, okay? And you have to win the overall, so win not just your category, but also beat everyone else who won their own categories in the overall at night, okay? You have to beat everyone, and they give away one pro card. And that's exactly what he did. So we went in there, he looked bloody good on the day. We came in even slightly sort of like leaner again. The peak went perfectly, which is that process of basically filling up someone with as many carbohydrates they can handle without spilling, dropping the fatigue, getting fluid balance just right. You know, it's quite a precise game. But what Corey does unbelievably well is communicates. You know, we spoke every single day throughout the entirety of that prep, which was several months long, every single day, constantly talking about, you know, these different variables, what we wanted to do. And he was a really engaged guy, which really sort of suits my fairly obsessive personality as well. Like, we always got on really, really well. But anyway, back to the WNBF Supernaturals. So he won his class, which was, again, a very, very competitive class. And at this point, I was like, bloody hell, I think we could do this. I had friends on the judging panel where a couple of them told me, like, yeah, you know, your guy looks on point for this. So he ends up winning the overall, which was probably one of the single most enjoyable and exciting moments of my coaching career to date. So he got me up on the stage. I was a little bit begrudging to go on there, but unbelievably cool to witness, not because just of the level of the achievement, but because of what had gone into that process to get to that point, you know, knowing how hard he'd worked, and also, you know, having seen the emotional low point of placing third in a regional qualifier to then winning our second British Championships in the most competitive natural bodybuilding show, probably in the world, certainly at that time, was an unbelievable experience. And as a result of turning pro, he was then a WNBF pro bodybuilder. So he made his pro debut. We went to a couple of pro shows, including the DFAC, so this is qualified for the BNBF show in Munich, which was a Grand Prix, meaning that you're in there with the heavyweights. Didn't win anything. Went to the World Finals for WNBF, again, the premier natural bodybuilding show in the world. And again, just placed outside the top 10, actually. Had two guys competing in the Pro Naturals. Had Carl Taylor as well. Pro Lightweight Naturals. Unbelievably competitive. Again, placed just outside the top 10 for that. And we, at that point, had to say, okay, well, look, what are the changes that we need to make to our physique here to go from placing outside the top 10 to being, you know, genuinely threatening for the best lightweight natural bodybuilder in the world. You know, we were pretty clear with our goals in this. Like, we're not there to make up the numbers. We're there to really contend and you know, push the best in the world. So we sat down, we analysed his physique and said, look, it is the lower body development that is letting us down here. What he has was just these crazy proportions. So tiny, tiny waist, really, really good wide clavicles. So that's, you know, the shoulders, and really good muscle bellies. So, you know, the shape of his musculature is fantastic. So the genetic material is all there, but we needed a load more lower body muscle mass in order to be competitive. And the first thing to get the head round from this perspective is just the timelines it's taken to bring you from having sort of subpar lower body development to some of the best in the world. And that has to be the goal here. You know, you won't win a world finals or pro show in natural bodybuilding if you do not have, you know, world-class lower body development. So the first thing to get your head around here is just the timelines involved, the distances or the timelines required to, even if you're very productive, truly add a load of muscle mass. So we're in the middle of what may well end up being a 3-year off season here for Corey. Okay, and so far we've brought him from having sort of legs that were underwhelming relative to the rest of his physique, and he has made some unbelievable progress over the last 2 years. So we basically gained continuously, steadily building up his training variables. So initially we sort of stripped things right back and we were like, right, let's find our best movements. Let's really refine what you're doing in the gym. Let's learn to maximize the stimulus we get from every individual set that you're doing, and then gradually build up those volumes, So we spent a solid 18 months gradually gaining weight and really pushing that lower body training. Upper body, technically speaking, has been kept close to maintenance. It has still grown a bit because he's got, you know, very responsive like delts, back, that type of thing. But anyway, what we've had to do is just push a crazy amount of lower body training volume. You know, we started off in the 10 to 12 rep range for quads, and by the end of our first push-up in body weight, which was 18 months, he was actually doing 23 sets per week for quads, split across 3 sessions per week, which is very, very unusual for a guy, okay? And he was pushing food steadily and steadily higher, sticking to the ideal rate of gain. And we just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And this is where most people would turn back, okay? Like, lower body training was just gruesome, okay? How hard you have to train and the amount of sort of volume required to do is very tough mentally. And one of the reasons he was able to keep going for so long is that he takes such good control of his lifestyle variables. So this guy gets 8.5 hours sleep every single night. He will usually typically have 1 meal a week where he doesn't exactly nail what is on the plan, probably tops. Many weeks, no variation at all from, you know, the plans that he's got, okay? He controls his entire life around maximizing the outcomes that he can get. Now, I'm not saying that's an approach that is necessary for all of you guys to get into shape, okay? It just isn't. But I thought it might be an interesting insight to see, for you guys to see, like, look, what are those people that are achieving truly, like, jaw-dropping results and incredible physiques? What are they actually putting into this? So we're talking here 6 2-hour training sessions per week, typically, okay? Very, very little sort of variation from the plan with regard to the nutrition. Every week we're hitting those calories. And he got to the point where, you know, eating 4,000 calories a day, feeling sick at the sight of every meal, at which point we sort of mini-cutted, reset things, used it to improve sensitivity to training volume, worked on a couple of intensity issues with the training, and now we are back into that building phase, okay? So this isn't typically a lifestyle that most people would choose to live. It has to be someone that loves that aspect of sort of like progression, that type of thing. But hopefully it just shows you guys what can be achieved as a natural, you know, if you really do dedicate your life to it. Like, the amount of muscle he has gained is truly ridiculous. Like, if you look at the before and afters of the quads, even now, you know, 2/3 of the way will likely be his gaining phase or off season, from earning that pro card to actually sort of hope to contend and threaten, you know, the best in the world on the pro stage. You know, the changes in muscularity, particularly in the lower body, are absolutely insane. And the amount of dedication required to get to this point is something that shouldn't be sniffed at. Now, what's really interesting with that relative to normal people is he would probably get 95% of those results by training 5 days a week for an hour and a quarter, okay, and being 90% of the way there with his nutrition, okay? Now, you get most of the results from those initial efforts, and every little extra bit of training volume or being extra attentive to your nutrition, those type of things, they give you diminishing returns to scale. But if you truly want to be the best in the world, then you need to be taking all of those little 0.5 percenters, you know, and we will look at everything available at any one time, and we will weigh up the pros and cons of every decision to make sure it's having the best positive impact. You know, we've had to overcome multiple connective tissue problems over this period of time, you know, pushing really hard, obviously. And, you know, we will weigh up, look, if we take ibuprofen, we get this slight numbing effect on muscle protein synthesis. So it does slightly reduce inflammation, which is one of the reasons why it reduces pain, but it can also reduce muscle growth. You know, is it worth it? What area are we dealing with? When do we take it? So every decision has to be sort of like taken within the context of the end goal, and it all has to be sort of carefully calculated. So this one is a little bit different this week. It's not something that's as applicable to, you know, most people, but hopefully it does just show you guys, look, there are people out there putting in crazy amounts of effort, you know, to this thing. And when people are like, I don't have time to train the 3rd time this week, or like, I really struggle to track my food, so-and-so's only getting great results because he's got great genetics. Like, yes, this guy, Corey, does have great genetics, but these people that are getting unbelievable results, they don't just rely on those genetics. They also are being unbelievably and militantly attentive to all of those small details that are often brushed under the carpet. And so often those people that want to blame genetics for their lack of progress actually just aren't doing 50% of the work that these people that are getting crazy results actually are.